We are live from Auckland Park in Johannesburg, and it's that time of the evening, one of my favorite times of the evening. It's where we engage with you on matters that affect you, matters that affect your family, matters that affect your community. Tonight, matriculation, the matriculants' future, very much in sharp focus. Why, you ask? Well, they are topical. A very good evening to South Africa and those watching around the world. My name is Blaine Herman, and this is It's Topical. Our digital audience, please, Lucia. Full house tonight. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. Good to have them on the program. We're going to get their burning questions and comments in a short while for our guests as well. So just a reminder, if you have those burning questions and comments, please put up your virtual hand and I'll do my very best to get to you. This is about your show. This is about you. It's about celebration, but also understanding the facts on the ground, the factors that affect where you got to in terms of your results. Great to have you on the program. The class of 2022 deserves the congratulation and respect of the nation for rising above the challenges of COVID-19, load shedding, and a period of unrest. The words of President Cyril Ramaphosa. Indeed, they have achieved advances. An overall NSC pass rate of just over 80%. The IEB matric cohort managed to get just over 98%. The National Development Plan vision, by 2030, South Africans should have access to education and training of the highest quality, leading to significantly improved learning outcomes. The performance of the South African learners in international standardized tests should be comparable to the performance of the learners from countries at a similar level of development and with similar levels of access. We in 2023, how close are we in achieving this goal? Which leads us to the question of the week. And we're asking you, do you think the class of 2022 is well prepared for life beyond matric? Walk with me. Send us your thoughts at It's Topical SABC. Do you think they are well prepared to tackle the challenges of tomorrow? Are they equipped enough in order to face a rapidly changing and complex world? Let us know at It's Topical SABC. Now, time for your roundup. Right, before we get to the business of the day, let me give you an update on the ANC Free State Conference. The party president, Cyril Ramaphosa, delivered the closing remarks a short while ago, touching on issues such as the energy crisis, as well as unity within the party. On the impending increase on electricity tariffs, he announced Eskom is considering suspending them in the short term. This is what he had to say.
I have personally said to Eskom, it will be an injury to our people if we implement this 18% now when we are going through load shedding. Put it in suspense for a while. And so the Eskom board is going to discuss that because the tariff was decided on by an independent agency, which is NERSA. At the request, yes, of Eskom, because Eskom needs the finance to be able to continue generating the power that we all need.
All right, back to today's main topic. Let's give you a sense of what we know and why it matters. And for that, we turn to the magic wall, as always, to give you some context. So basically, we're looking at the pass requirements. And up here we have the various. I think there's 4. I'll run through them as quick as I can. Admission to a bachelor's field of study. Now, let's go through this. At least 40% for home language, compulsory. At least 50% for 4 other subjects, excluding life orientation. Life orientation is contentious with one of our guests, so I'll tell you more about that. At least 30% for language of learning and teaching, as well as at least 30% for one other subject. It must pass at least 6 out of 7 subjects. Let's look at the admission for a diploma pass. This is the field of study. So at least 40%, right? Let's show you this. 40% for the home language, that's compulsory. At least 40% for 3 other subjects, excluding life orientation again. At least 30% for all language of learning and teaching of the tertiary institution. And of course, this has been one of the mainstays, at least 6 out of 7 subjects to pass. Now there's 2 more. Let's go to the higher certificate field of study. At least 40% here. Home language, 30% in the language of the learning and teaching, at least 40% for 2 other subjects, at least 30% of the 3 other subjects. And then let's go to the last one. And this is at the basic level, the National Senior Certificate. Candidates must obtain 40%. 40% in terms of 2 other subjects as well, at least 30% for 3 other subjects, and must pass at least 6 out of 7 subjects. So that, in a nutshell, is with regards to the pass requirements. I was listening to an interview with Professor Mary Metcalf, and she was talking about in terms of the exit of certain countries. She mentions Germany, she mentions Britain, and they have various stages of where learners can exit. Here in South Africa, we have one exit point, which is the National Senior Certificate exam. What does that mean? Do we need to relook at this? We will discuss in a short while. But let's open up. Let's bring in the better minds to have a discussion on matters that affect you with regards to this. Our digital audience is here, as always. Thank you very much indeed. And our guest for today, Mr. Matanzima Mweli, is the DG, Director General of the Basic Education. Sir, thank you very much indeed for your time. Good to have you on the program. We also have Mr. Mmusi Maimane, as well, the leader of Build One South Africa. He's going to be joining us on Zoom. He'll pop up in a short while. So let's just start with you. Context, very important. And I guess there's a unique context with this lot. The 2022, class of 2022, went through a lot. We're talking about COVID-19. We're talking about rolling blackouts. We're talking about protests, floods in certain areas. Still, they've achieved. What do you put this down to?
Well, first, thank you very much for having me playing on studio. And I want to congratulate the class of 2022. They are the best so far in history, except for the overall pass rate. Mm-hmm. They are second to the class of 2019, who obtained 81.4%, and they got 80.1%. Mm-hmm. But even then, in terms of the actual number of learners who passed, they are unparalleled. Mm-hmm. The number of learners who wrote the exams, they've got the least number of those who did not. Yeah. The number of those who obtained bachelor passes, they are the highest. The number of distinctions, they are the highest. I'm just talking mm-hmm. quality.
Right.
So they are the best so far. And we are very proud of them. Mm-hmm. And as we said, when we met with them, congratulating them, together with the minister, we believe that the world is their oyster.
Right. And we have some of the beautiful faces here, those who have achieved. We're going to get to them in a short while. I saw Mr. Mmusi Maimane here as well. So good to have you on the program. Welcome to It's Topical. Let me just run through some of the numbers, Mr. Maimane, with regards to what has been achieved. The past numbers, the number of candidates qualifying for admission to bachelor studies at university, over 278,000. Diploma, over 193,000. Higher certificate, over 108,000. And the national senior certificate, just 117. Happy with that standard? Is it just me that can't hear Mr. Maimane? If you just can unmute, sir.
Good evening, and good evening to fellow South Africans. I can hear you. I hope you can hear me.
We can. Go ahead.
Firstly, I, like all South Africans, want to congratulate the class of 2022 and celebrate South Africans who went against all odds and sat through this year's senior certificate and got through. I think that listening to those numbers, I can just simply take one as the number of bachelors rate relative to the number who sat down. If I'm not mistaken, And this is unfortunate because I would have wanted to give much fuller numbers, given that the DBE's website is down at the moment and the stats that have been reflected on are not being posted online. So it becomes very difficult for a Department of Basic Education in a week where they've just released their results for us to be able to interrogate what this 80.1% number means. So in some instances, you can say over 200,000 set and got a bachelor's degree on the basis of the criteria that you've just put, which is 4 subjects at 50, 1 at 40, and 1 at 30. But that number reflects, as a percentage of the 700,000 kids that have said, a fairly low percentage. And it tells us that even on that basis, these are kids who, when they enter university, as per last year's numbers, only 22% will get a throughput because just fundamentally the standard of pass is relatively low. I think we must be fair to ourselves.
So what would you do? Would you increase the 30% to 50%, say, for instance? Is that what you're calling for?
I've always made the case to say that there should be no child that passes any subject in this country at 30%. We should be 3 out of 10. We should all look at that and go, that is substandard. You would never accept that for any child.
There is
so
permutations.
Progressively.
There is permutations with regards to the various four categories. And correct me if I'm wrong. If you get 30% aggregate through all subjects, you fail, correct? Is that correct, Mr. Mweli? You do fail. You do.
That is correct. But why should it be that as a permutation of the senior certificate, which is what is now the matric results are based on, that actually for that pass rate, you can pass 3 subjects at 30? Well, what does that tell us about the quality? What do we believe about our children? Why would it, when you look at schools where the headmaster is committed to in fact making sure that education is improved, we ask the kids to pass at 50%. When you reflect on the IEB results that have just delivered 98% pass rate, they don't have the benchmark that is set at such a low 30% mark. They in fact ask of themselves that kids must be passing at about 50% and above. So frankly, I think we cannot be sitting here today and say to ourselves 30% must be acceptable for any subject in any country.
Mr. Mweli, the pass requirements, does it undermine the intellect of South Africa's youth?
Not at all. To start with, Mr. Maimane, with respect, is wrong. IEB is just an assessment body like Sakai, like DBE. The requirements for the National Senior Certificate are the same in the whole of South Africa. In case he didn't know that, he must know that. So IEB is just an assessment body that administers the exams. The requirements are the same. The quality assuring body is Mmusi for all of us. There's nothing different from what IEB candidates are writing in terms of the requirements with other assessment bodies. That's why universities don't discriminate. They won't say because you've gone through IEB, well, we'll take you at this requirement. Because you come from DBE, we take you at lower requirements. The additional point is that what Mr. Maimane doesn't know is that the National Senior Certificate as a qualification for the whole country, it's a multi-purpose qualification. It's for those going to university all over the world. You will never get all candidates who go through an exit certificate going to a university. It's only a few who will go to a university. In our case, it's 38%, which is higher than last year. I mean, the year before, which is 2021 and 2020, which was 36%. Even that number, universities don't have the capacity to absorb all the learners who would meet the requirements to go to university. The other issue is that the numerical value do not necessarily reflect the objective value of any education system. I think Mr. Maimane needs to read more about the researches that have been conducted. Mmusi conducted, the latest one was last year. They released a benchmark study comparing the National Senior Certificate with other qualifications elsewhere in the world, the best in the world. and the qualification compared favorably with the best in the world.
Well, let's hear, Mr. Maimane, in terms of some of your research. You've been very prolific, especially on social media, posting some of the data that, and I think one of the things I read is that you reckon that life orientation probably should be done away with. What sort of data do you have to maintain that we might be entrenching mediocrity and low expectation?
Well, there are a couple of things. And for one, I want to give clarity to the fact that I didn't say the benchmark of assessment is different for IEB and DBE. I merely said that the appraisal that IEB schools give is higher to their learners relative to what the DBE gives. That's important to note because the expectation is different. That's the first. If we're going to congratulate ourselves, let's be fair on what we're congratulating ourselves on. The DG knows very well that when you do our TIMS and you do our international benchmarking, we ranked in the lower level in terms of maths. So it is quite common cause that, in fact, when we compare our kids and the expense that we invest as far as the fiscus is concerned, we're not getting the full outcomes that we ought to be getting. So I use that international benchmarking as an issue, and we can compare it to other countries in Africa.
Yeah.
The third point I want to make is, what does our education in fact deliver? If you project where we're going to go, if we just keep doing what we've always done, how many engineers are we going to get? How many doctors are we going to get? And how many teachers, in fact, are we going to get? So when you look at who's passing which subjects as an entry requirement for university, that number tells us that projectively we're going to have a skills shortage as a country. And lastly, I think it can be unfair. It would not be uneconomical to not reflect on the fact that the majority of our kids end up in a space of unemployment, fundamentally because the skills base is low. And I can give you the international benchmarks in terms of the skills that we need for the economy in this country. And again, South Africa is ranking low. So I'm using those research numbers to indicate what kind of education and what kind of throughput we're putting for kids.
And to be fair, I was listening to Minister Andrew Motshekga the other day saying that with regards to maths and science, we're not there yet. I guess the question becomes, how do we get there? How do we get to that better place in terms of the improvement of numbers? But let's take it to some of the students that have been affected, but also some top achievers. Nkosi is one of the top achievers. If you can unmute, sir. Konzani, Mr. Konzani, I understand that you have, let me just premise this first. Now, when I go to a restaurant, I still use my fingers to count or work out the tip that I need for the waiter. You, sir, have achieved 100% in maths. How on earth did you do that? Unmute, Mr. Konzani. Let's see. Let's try. There we go. Go
on. Morning to you all.
Good evening.
Hello to you all. Yeah, good evening to you all. I just worked hard. There is no medicine that I took or secret ingredient that I did, but I just worked hard. I gave it my all, and then I was consistent in whatever I was doing.
Yeah. When you listen to the conversation with regards to the standard of pass and the pass requirements, what goes through your mind?
I don't want to take sides as of yet because I don't have much knowledge about it. So I think I'm gonna withdraw my opinions as of now because you still need some more information to talk about these things.
Sound like a politician. Maybe that's in the future. Good to have you on the program. Pulafelo, tell us about your results. If you can unmute, Pulafelo. There you go.
I got a bachelor's degree with 7 distinctions.
My heavens. Congratulations. And through against all the odds, right? Because your cohort, your friends, your peers went through the most with regards to COVID-19, with regards to rolling blackouts, studying under candlelight. How do you overcome? What goes through your mind?
Like you should have determination, and you should just kind of like tell yourself to keep on going.
Yeah.
And not let the blackouts stop you from reaching your goals. So that was technically what I did.
Yeah, 100%. We congratulate you and your peers, and congratulate your parents as well. I think they deserve a lot of respect and a lot of congratulations for the hard work that they've been putting in as well to get to assist learners like yourself, pupils like yourself, to get to that better place. Jordan Maistri, talk to us about your results.
Well, I achieved 4 distinctions and 3 Bs with a bachelor's pass.
Right. What's your recipe for success?
Just determination and keeping yourself focused, not getting distracted.
Yeah.
And it's that like driving force, even though you feel like you don't have to do stuff, like you don't want to, it's more about the need to get it done.
Right.
And not letting anything distract you.
Right. Jordan Maistri comes from good stock. Your father, Kenny Maistri.
Hey!
There we go. There we go. I look up to him, one of the best voices in the country in more ways than one. So congratulations, Jordan. Let me just bring in Mr. Governor, Rajan Governor. I understand you're a principal, sir. Talk to us about your school. How did it fare? I want to get your perspective.
Good evening to the viewers of It's Topical, as well as to your studio guests. I want to begin by congratulating all the students, all the learners of 2022, who during this unprecedented time have done the remarkable. So well done to you all for having completed your schooling career. I'm principal of Mount View Secondary School, a school on the north coast of KZN. And a learner from my school, Nikita Govender, was placed #1 in South Africa in the quintile 4 schools. And she was also placed #1 in the province. The learners of the school have done exceptionally well. Many of the learners come from varied social, economical backgrounds, but I am absolutely proud of them because they were able to be resilient, and despite all the challenges, despite the triple challenges of COVID-19, the floods in Natal, as well as the unrest, they were able to soldier on and to do the impossible.
But when you hear the conversation, though, with regards to the standard of pass and the quality of the pass, taking nothing away from these brilliant students that appear before us, as a principal, how do you process that?
Look, we can never be satisfied, despite the fact, we may get 86% or 90%. We cannot set our children up for mediocrity. So we persevere, we look at best practices, and obviously we take we look at international standards.
Yeah.
But we need to remember that our country is not, an equal country in the sense of its history. But nevertheless, we need to believe, we need to look at ways. I think all parties, I'm not a politician, but, education is an important aspect of the lives of our children and the future of our country.
Yeah.
So whether you like it or not, we are, in the political domain. So I would say that it's important that we clap hands together, we look at solutions, and we find the best way forward for our children,
right,
because they depend on us. What kind of legacy would we leave for future generation if we cannot fix what we have currently?
All right.
So I'm hopeful that with the kind of involvement with all stakeholders, we can fix the system that many are criticizing currently.
Right. Mr. Governor, thank you very much indeed. I'll come back to our digital audience in a short while. Mr. Ngwele, I just want to bring in with regards to what the DA has said recently. They released a statement talking about, and they're disputing the 80.1% pass. They say the real 2022 matric pass rate is only 54.6%. And part of their calculus was the dropout level. To bring in the TVET learners into account, the DA calculates the matric pass rate from the grade 10 cohort that ought to have completed matric. What's your response to that?
Well, quickly, if you allow me, Mr. Maimane has referred to TIMSS and other international studies. What he's not telling the viewers is that South Africa has improved over years. Indeed, it is true. It used to rank very low on the radar. And as a developmental state, we accept that there's still a lot to be done. But we also need to bear in mind that there are only 3 countries that are participating in Africa. And it's not all countries that are participating in these international studies. It's actually those countries that have the courage to participate. We might not be doing well, but we've improved. There's only one study where we remain the same.
Right.
It's PELS. SACMEC, we used to be very low. We are now in the top 5.
Right.
The World Economic Forum this year released a report that says South Africa is among the top 10 countries in Africa, among the top 100 in the world. And that study is out there, which was also used by the World Economic Forum. Although it's a perception index, but it takes many variables into account.
Right.
So the point is, as a developmental state, as the principal correctly pointed out, we'll never claim to have arrived. We are far from arriving.
Right.
We've got targets that are set for 2030.
Right.
And these young men and women of the class of 2022 have done a lot to get us to meet those goals.
They have, no doubt. But
Yes.
shouldn't there should be a sharper focus on looking at the dropout level? It is an issue. It is a reason, of course, for concern. Do we have a system to track this?
Well, first, I don't know how people do these things. Sometimes I ask myself, which school did they attend? Pass rate is the number of learners who wrote. Then you divide that by the number of learners who pass. That gives you a pass rate. Dropout rate is the number of learners who enter the system at the exit point, and the number of learners who would leave the system.
Right. But my question is, do we know how many are dropping out?
Yes,
do we have
do.
a system that tracks it up?
Yes, we do.
We do?
We do. The dropout rate, remember, and many of these people take a linear view in calculating the dropout rate. Because learners who enter grade 1, let's say 1.2, like Professor Jonathan Jansen has done, they enter grade 1, but at the end of grade 9, those learners have got an option to continue with schooling or to go to TVET colleges. The 800,000 learners who are in TVET colleges over years, that number comes from schools.
Okay.
And therefore, when people calculate, they don't take that into account. So our dropout rate is between 5 and 12%, and nothing more than that.
All right.
Yes.
Just a quick word before we go to break. Mr. Maimane, you agree with that? Makes sense to you?
I think it's important for us to assess accurately, as I'm sure the DG would accept this as a point, that also equally so, it's discounting those who go to TVET colleges, which, as I've indicated earlier, that the throughput rate is low. We need to interrogate how many drop out at grade 11, because that often masks how many kids eventually sit at the end. So I'd like to get those figures from the DG, because they will sober up the facts about how we achieve this 81% that we are talking about today.
Right.
But before we go to break, I want to say to all the learners who have passed and the exceptional results, South Africans were proud of you, I'm proud of you, and I'm grateful that you get the marks that you do.
Yeah.
I just want it for more kids in this country.
Right. No doubt. Congratulations to them once again. We need to take a quick break. They're a class act, isn't it? In more ways than one. We're going to talk to more learners who have achieved. What's the recipe for success? More next. Welcome back. We're talking about the Matric results. Very important, the future of this country. The class of 2022, are they well prepared in terms of life after Matric? Are they well prepared with regards to the challenges of tomorrow, this complex world that we live in, the challenges that it kicks up? Let us know at its Topical SABC. We have the DG of Basic Education here, Mr. Mmusi Maimane, as well, also a digital audience, but also the lady in the know, Matlaka Komane, SABC news reporter. Your beat for the longest of time is education. And you've seen the challenges these pupils go through over the years. 80.1% is the pass rate. There's been some who say, dispute it. But Congratulations nonetheless. But during your reporting, especially over the last year or so, what have you picked up in terms of the wins, but the challenges as well?
You know, what we can't, let's start with the challenges, Blaine. What we can't run away from is that there are problems in the system. For example, if you look at infrastructure, I've been in Limpopo for a few months now, where you see that. But also, what I'm also picking up is that some of these schools, there's challenges with human resources in terms of being able in certain areas. I mean, in Limpopo, you find some of the most rural places that you can find. It's not a beautiful place to attract talent. I know that there is one particular, I think it's a district, if I'm not mistaken. I think if I continue, the DG will know what exactly I'm talking about. I spoke to the directors. I have engagements with him every now and then. I remember him telling me that Matlako, in the year, he had lost 3 maths teachers, and even those teachers were not enough for the schools that he had. He said they come in here for 6 months or so, they get better opportunities. These are guys that are in demand in terms of those gateway subjects. That's why you're probably not really seeing the needle moving the way it should be moving. Blaine, I mean, if you look at the 2021 DG, your diagnostic report that's online, it speaks about, I think, the distinctions that were gotten in maths in the class of 2021 was less than 3%, or just above 3% in terms of the number of actual distinctions, not the pass, but those that managed to get 80% and above.
And that's worrying.
And it is worrying. You also look at the actual infrastructure. I mean, right now there was that issue with scholar transport, but some things, it's not necessarily something you can blame at national department, but provinces should also take responsibility for the running of their province. But there's also, children face challenges. We were in Piring a few months ago, and we went back recently as well. Piring is on the border of the Kraskop and Mpumalanga area in Sekhukhune, Ooststad, I think. And in that class, there was about 8 orphans. These were children that had no parents, and they have to every day find their way to school. There's one particular child, I remember, we actually drove her to a house because I wanted to get an idea, how far are you from school? And she was about like 10 Ks. She walks one way, 10 Ks again. So it's about 20 Ks that she used to walk every morning. When we went back, unfortunately, she didn't pass Matric, but there was one who had, I think, survived 3 deaths of all parents, all her caregivers, and she managed to pass with a diploma. So it's many, it's what's happening in the home. Communities also contribute to what happens in a school. So you look at that. I mean, where there is poverty, there's lots of challenges, and there are also the actual, the building blocks, the actual bricks and mortar of a school. Some of those are challenges, but you also find schools that are just, outside of that, they're able to, swim and really achieve the results. But it takes a lot of commitment from educators. I mean, you'd heard the minister there thanking educators, saying that they also contribute to this pass rate. There is, in that particular area that I spoke about, that Piring area, I know that educators there, from when exams started, I think a week or so before the exams actually commenced, they had a camp, closed in the students weren't going out because they were saying there's a lot of distractions, in certain communities. It's not like playing your child and my child and DJ's child, where you're going to sit on your child's neck every day. Some children have to fend for themselves. In other communities, there's more distractions than in other communities.
It takes so much to achieve, given what you just raised as well. Let's look at it from a psychological point of view and bring in Nazreen Karim. She's a psychologist. Nazreen, good to have you in the program. Your better mind to help us understand what is going on in the minds of these youngsters, going through the most in terms of COVID-19, which will be with us for the foreseeable future, but also the other external issues that Matlako has raised: infrastructure, protests, floods. How does one deal with that mentally? If you can unmute, Nazreen. Nazreen, if you can unmute. There you go. Go on.
Hi, Blaine, and congratulations, class of 2022. So yeah, from the time kids are little, they are being told about Matric. It's an entire preparation throughout junior school and high school. The kids are told about the importance of Matric and the impact that it has in their future. There's so much hype and excitement around it. On top of that, you have the countrywide attention that's paid towards the result. And then again, there's family members and loved ones so many people might have expectations and that on the particular learner themselves, and they find that it's actually a time of great pressure. And also we find that many learners actually feel that the results actually can define them in this particular moment. So it is a time of great pressure and a time of stress. It can be very stressful for kids. I mean, I find myself quite inspired by the learners who mentioned that they did not let any obstacle get to them. Right. However, we do, as the lady has mentioned earlier, that there are some learners who are affected by problems that are out of their control, such as infrastructure, such as situations such as poverty and perhaps maybe gangsterism. The list goes on and on, perhaps lack of resources. So there are certain circumstances that are out of kids' control. And in a case like that, I would say that it could be particularly hard for those learners who might be experiencing great disappointment during this particular time. And we also find, I know we've had discussions previously around mental health and how so many learners are actually walking around with undiagnosed mental health difficulties. And we find that in that case, particularly with anxiety and depression, that disappointment in matric results could actually even furthermore act as a further significant trigger to their depression.
So
and their feelings
how would they process that then? Those who didn't make it, or those who didn't achieve what they thought they would have achieved?
Well, I think at the end of the day, it all comes down to support. So when we look at matric results that are on the way, whoever are the loved ones that are associated with the learner, with whichever support system or whichever family member or friends, whoever actually is involved directly with the particular learner, it could even be a teacher. I would say it's so important, the reaction towards the matric results. It's so important because especially parents do not often always realize, because look, it's an emotional time, it's an exciting time for everyone. So often parents do not always realize the impact of their words on a child's self-esteem or their self-confidence and their self-concept. So it's so important to start with the reaction, because remember, that particular learner is also feeling a great sense of disappointment, and it's often very difficult to have to face up to your parents, your friends, your loved ones. That pressure is so much pressure, so it's so important that they feel it's a safe space for them to come and approach the loved one or the parent or the caregiver. So I would emphasize emotional support. I would emphasize that they are given as much encouragement as possible, because with that encouragement, they can then be inspired to actually do better and to actually be able to then find that inner drive, as one of the learners mentioned earlier. It's about that inner drive. And sometimes when you're suffering with depression, it's very, very hard to actually find that inner drive. But if you have a loved one that can actually bring it about, and this can be any form of loved one. It could be a parent, a teacher, a support system, it can be a guardian, it can be a friend, but to find that inner support to actually give it to that learner where they can actually feel that they can actually continue and strive to.
Let's speak to some people or someone who is no doubt has offered some support. Mum Duduzile is sitting with Sinako Konke. And I understand, Mum, that your daughter has gone through the most in terms of this year as well. Sometimes missing out because of protests, studying in the dark under candlelight. What's it been for you as a parent? And Sinako, you can talk to us about what's it been, going through the matric in the current situation. Duduzile, to you first, if you can unmute. If you can unmute, there we go. No, we're still not there. There we go. Go on.
Ngithanda ukubabongela kakhulu abantwana abaphumelele ku-matric and kube nezinto ezenzakele empilweni yakhe umntwana esahamba endleleni kulonyaka ubekade akubanjwe nawo umkhuhlane, yabona ibe nalelo valo lokuthi mhlawumbe angeke akwazi ukuthi angaphumeleli, kodwa kona kwakuyisifiso sakhe ukuthi azafikela. Besebenza kanzima-ke ey'khandla esifisa kona ukuya le ku-national. Ngibonga kakhulu uNkulunkulu ukuthi kufezekile amaphupho akhe. Yeah. Well,
Yeah. Sinako, I understand that you want to study medicine against all odds.
yes, I do.
Yes. Talk to us about how you
Excellent.
achieved this results, given the hurdles that you had to jump over.
I guess it's having a set goal, like actually knowing what you want and motivating yourself at every point. As somebody has said always, like Matric is mentally draining, and it is like a very disruption to your mental health, because at one point you feel like this is too hard. I can't do this anymore. I have to give up.
Yeah.
But having the self-motivation, knowing what you want and striving for your goal, like no matter what happens, because in life we're not made of our circumstances, but who we are is determined by how we act after we go through such problems and circumstances.
Right.
Yeah. So medicine is like, I want to help people that maybe are going through certain problems, and because it's always been a dream of mine for my name to be said in the same breath as the Mona Lisa.
Wow. And we wish you all the very best, all the very best. Kenneth, unmute, sir. You obviously, done well. You are from, is it Paul Boys High in the Western Cape? One of the top achievers there. And you reckon use every opportunity that comes your way?
I think definitely. Not only in terms of my academics and making sure I study as hard as I possibly can, but also making sure that in terms of all the last rugby games, last hockey games, or going to watch last hockey games, last inter-house athletics, last time I could debate against Gray, for example. All the last, as I said, making sure I participated or at least went to go watch them. Knowing that hopefully this year it's gone. You can't experience that as a student ever again.
Yeah.
And also making sure that I'm not just Anamat, or I said something that really resonated with me. You can't just study the whole time. You have to make sure that you study and make time for being social and rating and like Stephen Covey said, sharpening your axe.
Yeah. Nothando Dlodlo. Against all odds, 5 A's, I understand, and 2 B's. Talk to us about the road to this success.
The road to this success was very challenging. However, I was able to overcome it. We had the support of our teachers at Mount View Secondary. I had my support from my parents, even though it was hard, especially with COVID-19 and load shedding. We were able to overcome all those challenges, and I got 5 distinctions.
Wow. Congratulations, from the bottom of our hearts. And I said this is part of the program today, is a celebration of you. So let's hear more of your stories. Chifiwa, talk to us about your road to success.
My road to success started, I think I would say, with the finals. I got 7 distinctions in the end.
Wow.
But when I first wrote them, I only had 5 distinctions and I had 2 Bs. And I think my average was sitting on around 83. So when I, put in that work, I would be up at 4:30 every morning, and everyone would think I'm crazy because who starts their morning at 4:30? And around 12, I would be wrapping it up, and everyone would think this girl is crazy. But I knew what I was doing. So wake up every morning, and in the end, I got an average of 91%.
Wow.
So I was very proud of myself.
Hard work does indeed pay off, isn't it? Shafia, talk to us about your story, then we'll go to Aliyah and Caleb, as well as Nikita.
So I tried to work consistently throughout the year, and it just showed that it paid off. All the hard work really did pay off. Like how you said, I got 7 distinctions with a bachelor and an average of 95%, with my highest subject being mathematics, 99%.
Well, I was just going to talk to our guests as well with regards to these gateway subjects, maths, science. It really talks to the issue of development, it talks to the issue of economy. But how do we get to those better results? That's the big question. Let's talk to Aliyah and then Caleb. Aliyah, if you can unmute, go ahead.
So the last years of our lives have been very challenging, physically and mentally. But I believe that I overcame all of these challenges, and at the end of it, the fruit that I reaped was much sweeter and more satisfying than ever.
Right.
And to achieve these results, I drafted a learning schedule by trial and error, one that corresponded with the load shedding schedule, obviously. And it took a lot of time, it took a lot of effort and determination, self-motivation, and I have now 6 distinctions in 1 week.
Oh my goodness. Impressive indeed. Caleb, talk to us about your success. Recipe, sir.
It's taken a lot of prayer, a lot of help from my family. I have a very supportive family, my parents, and the resources that the school has been giving me, and all the sacrifices from my teachers in order to push me to do my best. And visualizing my future helped me to do and give off my best. And that's how I got 6 distinctions.
Excellent. I want to hear from all of you before we take it back to our guests. We're running out of time, but let's hear from Nikita, Lindelo, and then Masase. Nikita.
Good evening, everyone. These 3 years have been very challenging for all of us. It was a very big transition from grade 10 to 12. And like I agree with what Nontando and Caleb said about our school, they really put in the work and they had so much of faith in all the children, which I think is rare these days, including parents. My parents were very involved. And time management was very crucial for me. And I think that everyone should use everything around you to your advantage, because there will be people around you who I think insult you and bring you down. It happens a lot in high school. So you got to find something to keep yourself motivated. For me, my motivation was myself. That's my case. And we are taught that hard work pays off. If you work, you will achieve what you want. So we got to be willing and open-minded. And it's not just hard work, because I think when I say hard work, people misconstrue that and they think overwork.
Yes.
So you just gotta work. At least before you get to hard work, start by working.
Yeah, instructive as always. Lindelo, and then Masase.
Hi guys, my journey was difficult. With the effects of COVID-19 and load shedding, it was a very difficult journey, but at the end I was able to get 7 distinctions and a 98% in maths.
Okay. Masase, then Rikonise. Masase, to you first.
Good evening, everyone. For me, the journey was really tough. I think the only reason why I made it through is because I had so much motivation from family and support from my teachers. And like Shifiwa mentioned, also waking up at odd hours to work and, then put in the work. And that's how I managed to exit with 6 distinctions.
Wow. Final word to you, Rikonise.
And I think I know that I achieved the things I achieved because of 2 things. My support system at home, at school, and my friends played an important part in me obtaining 7 distinctions and an average of 92. One other thing I'd like to tell everybody is that you shouldn't give up. I think grit and perseverance is what made me achieve what I have, and that's all, I guess.
Yeah. Did I miss anyone else? We've spoken to Atinkosi there earlier on. Great to hear from you. It's important to hear from you. Why? Because it informs the strategy of getting to that better place. Thank you very much indeed for your stories, and helps us encourage the others who didn't quite make it. There's always a second chance. So Mmusi Maimane, let's bring you back into this conversation. With regards to, I was listening to Professor Mary Metcalf the other day, talking about how, I guess, education tends to mirror the inequalities in a society. But how can we use education to break the disparities within a society? What do you reckon?
Well, thank you. And it's fundamental. If we're going to change the future of this country, we need to fix the education system. And to me, there are a number of key elements. We need to fix all the infrastructural backlogs. It cannot be that today kids are still studying and have used pit latrines, and so are educators. We need to empower parents more, because parents know best where their kids need to go. And that's why I've always proposed some form of a voucher system. I think as per the National Development Plan, which the Minister cites, is that we need to improve to a 50% pass rate. That's common cause. And I think that's not me saying that. We need to ensure that kids start school, finish school. I hear what the DG is saying. And I'm sad that today we're talking to the DG. I wish that, because in true democracy, the DG will represent any government that comes in. I wish we would have heard from Nji Motshekga herself, who has been there for the last number of years as Minister of Education, presided over the Jobs for Cash report that indicated that principals are chosen by unions, presided over this education system. I wish she could come on the show and give us a vision for education as we reform curriculum. I think we need to scrap life orientation. I've fought hard for that, replace it with critical thinking so that our kids have a broadened view of what the world looks like. And I think it's important, as the National Development Plan says, that we need to improve the number of kids that are sitting for mathematics. Because in truth, as per last year, only 34,000 kids wrote maths and passed it at a C level passed it at a C level. That's not how many who wrote it. Passed it at a C level. So what I'm saying to you is that it's quite common cause that for the kids who start school and those who eventually write mathematics, only 34% of them, which indicates 3% kids pass maths at C level. I think we can ask better of ourselves. So all my call is, let's not, whilst we congratulate, let's reflect on the fact that we've still got a long way to go to fixing our education system, and we need to put priority on this. For it is one of the highest budget votes. We spend 289 billion rands on education, and I think that's not a small amount. We need to get bang for our buck, and that's the change I'm asking for.
All right, I just want to pick up one point, what Mr. Maimane said, Mr. Mweli, with regards to life orientation. Do you think it has a low academic utility currently?
It's extremely underrated by people who are not in education. Life orientation is for the holistic development of the child. Many people talk about the need for the development of the soul. During the time of our first president, there used to be talk about the RDP of the soul. That's what the life orientation is attempting to do, to support the efforts of teachers in various subjects to develop the child holistically. It can only be said by people who do not know the value of it and the value of developing a human being holistically.
Tlako, let me give you the last word. From what you picked up over the past couple of days regarding especially maths and science as the gateway subjects, as it's called, contributes a lot to economy, contributes a lot to development. Are you finding a light at the end of the proverbial tunnel with regards to any measures in place that could get us to that better place in terms of those results? What the minister's saying, what the unions are saying, stakeholders?
You know, when we spoke to the unions, Blaine, at the results on Thursday evening, they had said, I think I spoke to SATU and PEU, Professional Educators Union, saying that teachers are still seeking from the department, you know, support. Some feel that they are not being supported. I think when it comes to gateway subjects, we also need to look at what is coming out of higher education in terms of the supply that DG Mweli and his provincial departments would get. I don't really have a report on that. I haven't seen anything on that. But also, you do, I think they are public-private partnerships. You see people coming into schools in some places trying to, you know, assist the situation. But also look at Gauteng, what Gauteng has done with your schools of specialization, where they are having schools specifically to hone that, you know, those particular subjects to ensure that children are able to, that have the ability to do it, you know, they're able to, you know, concentrate on those subjects to ensure that, I suppose, we're bringing in more students out of the system that are able to take mathematics and cope with it at a level that goes into tertiary. You know, they can go into tertiary level and still be able to graduate, because it's one thing to just be a conveyor belt of issuing certificates, but are those certificates going to help these children in the ever-changing world? And I think that's where the conversation of life orientation comes. I did hear DG saying the development of the soul. I mean, there are churches and you can meditate and whatever else that you need to do. Can we afford to nurture the soul when the actual, you know, the bricks and the mortar of actually building up a student, we haven't really focused on that. Should we not maybe be spending that and channeling it towards getting more people into the system?
Triage the situation.
Exactly.
Ms. Komani, Mr. Mweli, Mr. Maimane, digital audience, great to have you on the program. Thank you very much indeed. We also have our very popular word on the street feature. It's coming to you a bit later today, but yes, we didn't forget. That is because the outgoing Matric class of 2022 has some messages for the incoming class of 2023. And here are some well wishes from outside Parktown Boys High in Johannesburg. Take a look.
First place is Mthokozisi Nkomo. The 2022 NEC exam pass rate has reached 80.1%. The second highest since 2019.
The class of 2022 faced a lot of challenges. COVID impacted us, but we persevered and we did okay. So next year's Matrics, I just want to say, Matric isn't just revision, so study hard and you'll do well.
Work hard, even if that is getting 50s in your subjects, as long as you're trying your best, that is what matters.
Parents, please, your children need you. Please support them. It's all a teamwork thing, and if you guys can push through together, both learner and as a parent, you guys are gonna make it.
So with this load shedding, my advice to you guys would be that you guys are to study during the afternoon so that when the lights are off at night, you don't have to study as much, and you're doing a lot of your work in the mornings as well. Waking up very early, do that, have a little 2 naps, and then go back to it.
Dealing with robots issues, traffic to get to school, it's going to become stressful, very stressful. But with perseverance and hard work, you can definitely get through it easily enough. And your results will show all your hard work come 2024.
And with struggles you're having within this country, try the best that you can do to get the best Matric results as possible. Make your family proud, keep your mental health intact, and stay safe. Study as hard as you can. Class of 2022, signing out.
Appreciate the advice. Here's my take before we leave. Investment, meaning the act of putting money, effort, time, etc. into something to make a profit or get an advantage. For me, getting an advantage are the operative words, right? Especially from an educational point of view. What are the returns? Glad you asked. Child development. We're talking about social development. We're talking about professional development. By the time your child leaves school, they must have the confidence in the standard of education they receive. More investment in education means that the standard continues to improve to a point where we start hammering away, not just chipping away, but hammering away at the socioeconomic inequalities. We as parents, as adults, we know that the job market is dynamic. In order to meet its changing demands, we need to adapt as a nation. We need to set the bar at a level that prepares our children for the world out there, because quality education offers our children long-lasting currency. So let's invest. And that's my take. If you missed anything, be sure to watch this episode of It's Topical on YouTube. Until next week, my brothers and sisters, take care. Bye-bye.